I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these revenge stories, but after what happened with my HOA, I just have to share. I'm a pretty laid-back person. Ask anyone who knows me. I'm the neighbor who lends out his tools without asking when you'll return them. I'm the guy who will help you move furniture without complaining. I don't look for trouble, but when it finds me, well, you'll see. 3 years ago, my wife Sarah and I purchased our dream home in Sunnyside Estates. It wasn't the biggest house in the world, but it had everything we wanted. 4 bedrooms for our family of 4, a spacious kitchen where Sarah could indulge her baking hobby, and most importantly, a gorgeous in-ground pool in the backyard. The pool was the selling point, complete with a waterfall feature, ambient lighting, and a small slide that our teenagers, Emma, 16, and Jake, 14, absolutely loved. After 15 years of apartment living and saving every penny, we had finally achieved our little piece of suburban paradise. Sunnyside Estates was a charming subdivision with tree-lined streets, meticulously maintained common areas, and what initially seemed like a friendly community. During our first week, 3 different neighbors brought over welcome baskets. The neighborhood had seasonal block parties, a community garden, and even a small park with a playground for younger kids. It seemed perfect. During the closing process, our realtor Bill mentioned the Homeowners Association. Just a standard HOA, he assured us with a wave of his hand. Annual dues are $400, which covers landscaping of common areas, maintenance of the park, and snow removal from sidewalks in winter. Most HOAs get a bad rap, but this one just keeps the neighborhood looking nice. I skimmed through the 30-page covenant document, noting the usual restrictions. No vehicles parked on the street overnight. Trash cans must be hidden from street view. Holiday decorations removed within 2 weeks of the holiday. Specific approved colors for exterior paint, etc. Nothing seemed particularly alarming or different from what I'd heard about other HOAs. For the first 6 months, everything was peaceful. We received friendly waves from neighbors while walking our golden retriever, Max. We were invited to join the neighborhood book club, poker night, and the community gardening committee. Emma made friends with the girls across the street, and Jake joined a neighborhood basketball group that played at the local court. Sarah and I often sat on our back patio in the evenings, watching the sunset reflect off our pool, congratulating ourselves on finding such a perfect community. That all changed when Gerald Hoffman was elected HOA president. Gerald was a retired corporate lawyer in his early 60s with thinning gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a perpetual look of disapproval etched onto his face. He had too much time on his hands, and as we would soon discover, a passion for wielding petty power. He ran unopposed on a platform of elevating neighborhood standards and strict covenant enforcement. During his campaign speech at the annual HOA meeting, which only about 20 of the 90 homeowners attended, he spoke at length about declining property values due to lax standards and the importance of consistency in aesthetic presentation. The first sign of trouble came just 2 weeks after Gerald took office. I returned home from work to find a bright orange notice taped to our front door, visible to anyone walking by, a deliberate public shaming tactic, as I would later learn. The notice cited us for unapproved recreational equipment visible from street view. The violation: my son's basketball that had been left on the driveway overnight. The fine was $25, and the notice warned that repeat violations would double each time. "This is ridiculous," Sarah said as she crumpled the notice. "It's just a basketball." I laughed it off, paid the $25, and reminded Jake to put his ball in the garage. "Probably just the new guy trying to make his mark," I told Sarah. "It'll settle down." Little did I know, this wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the end of the beginning. The basketball incident was just the beginning. Within a month, Gerald Hoffman had transformed our peaceful neighborhood into his personal fiefdom, and our mailbox became a repository for his petty dictates. First came a $50 fine for our grass exceeding 2.5 inches in height. Gerald himself had measured it with a ruler, documenting the violation, with close-up photos attached to the notice. The grass was 2.75 inches tall in one corner of our yard, a quarter-inch violation that apparently warranted financial penalty. "This is getting ridiculous," I told Sarah as we looked at the photos. "He must have nothing better to do than crawl around measuring grass." Next came a $75 fine for unauthorized decorative elements producing sound on our property. The wind chimes Sarah's mother had given her that hum on our back porch. They'd been there since we moved in, but apparently Section 17.4(3) of the covenant, recently amended, required written board approval for all exterior decorative elements that produce a sound. I paid these fines, not wanting to rock the boat, but when we received a warning for excessive water usage based on our sprinkler schedule, I decided it was time to address the situation directly. I tried bringing it up at the monthly HOA meeting, but Gerald's parliamentary maneuvering made it nearly impossible for homeowners to speak. Residents' concerns must be submitted in writing 7 business days before the meeting to be added to the agenda. He announced smugly when I raised my hand. When I pointed out this rule wasn't in the bylaws, he informed us it had been recently amended. The meeting was a masterclass in petty tyranny. Gerald limited homeowner comments to 2 minutes, consistently interrupted people to inform them they were off topic, and used his gavel liberally to silence dissent. His 3 allies on the 5-person board, retirees who seemed to enjoy the drama, voted in lockstep with him on every issue. After receiving our 4th violation notice, this one for unapproved pool accessories, because our pool floats were visible through our fence, I decided to request a private meeting with Gerald. Perhaps a reasonable conversation away from the public forum would help. We met at the community clubhouse on a Tuesday evening. I arrived 5 minutes early. Gerald was 15 minutes late, a power move I recognized from my corporate days. He arrived carrying a thick binder labeled Covenant Violaciones, Section RT, as though he needed to reference specific regulations about my pool noodles. "Thanks for making time to discuss these notices," I began politely. "We feel like we're being targeted unfairly. 4 violations in a month seems excessive." Gerald adjusted his glasses and smiled coldly. "Nothing personal, Mr. Mitchell. Rules are rules. Without strict enforcement, property values decline. It's simple economics." "But some of these seem arbitrary," I argued. "The wind chimes have been there since we moved in. No one mentioned approval was needed." Section 17.4(3) clearly states that all exterior decorative elements that produce sound require written board approval. He flipped his binder open to a highlighted paragraph. "This was amended last year." "But that's—" Furthermore, he interrupted, "your pool area has multiple violations that I've generously overlooked so far. The water feature exceeds the permitted decibel level by approximately 3.2 decibels. Your pool lights stay on past the 10 p.m. dark sky requirement. And I've noticed what appears to be an unauthorized change in your water filtration system." I was stunned. "You've been measuring the sound of our waterfall. From where?" "As HOA president, I have the authority to inspect all exterior features to ensure compliance. Your continued resistance only calls more attention to these issues." "Gerald, this is our home. We're not trying to cause problems. We just want to enjoy our property without feeling like we're under surveillance." He closed his binder with a snap. "The covenant exists to protect everyone's property values. If you find it too restrictive, perhaps Sunnyside Estates isn't the right community for you." The implied threat wasn't subtle. As I stood to leave, Gerald added, "By the way, confrontational behavior toward HOA leadership is itself a violation under the recently amended Section 33.6. The fine is $100. I left the meeting seething. That night, as predicted, we received an email notification of a new $100 fine for confrontational behavior toward HOA leadership. When I showed Sarah, she exploded. "He can't do this. This is harassment." But according to the HOA covenant, which Gerald seemed to be amending at will, apparently he could. That night, I started reading the covenant in detail, looking for anything that might help us fight back. Sarah joined me at the kitchen table, and we stayed up until 2 a.m. highlighting inconsistencies and questionable amendments. "There has to be a way to stop him," she said, rubbing her tired eyes. Otherwise, we'll be fined into foreclosure for existing. Little did we know, Gerald's interest in our property went far beyond wind chimes and pool noodles. He had bigger plans for our backyard oasis, plans that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Over the next 3 months, Gerald's campaign of harassment intensified. The violations became more frequent and increasingly absurd. We received a formal notice for excessive gatherings when we hosted Emma's 16th birthday party, a simple backyard affair with 15 teenagers. The covenant, Gerald informed us, limited non-resident human density to 1 guest per 250 square feet of property space without a special event permit, which cost $175 to apply for with no guarantee of approval. Sarah's tomato plants, growing in decorative containers on our patio, were cited as unauthorized vegetation not consistent with approved landscape designs. When Sarah pointed out they weren't even visible from the street, Gerald informed her that aerial visibility also counted, and he had spotted them when inspecting another property's second-story window. Even our bedroom curtains earned us a fine when we changed them from beige to navy blue. According to Gerald, window coverings visible from the exterior must maintain approved neutral tones harmonious with the community aesthetic. The financial burden was becoming serious. We'd accumulated over $800 in fines in just a few months, and Gerald had added a processing fee for late payments, which seemed to increase at his whim. But we weren't the only ones suffering under Gerald's reign of terror. The Paddles next door received a notice that their traditional Diwali decorations were excessive and unapproved holiday displays. Mrs. Jenkins, a 70-year-old widow who had lived in the neighborhood since it was built, received a $50 fine because her roses grew 2 inches above the permitted garden height. "My Harold planted those roses on our 50th anniversary," she told me tearfully. "I can't bear to cut them down." The Rodriguez family faced the most heartbreaking situation. Their 12-year-old son, Diego, was a talented basketball player who practiced daily on their driveway hoop. Gerald claimed the backboard's white color created excessive reflective glare and was improperly secured, threatening legal action if it wasn't removed. Diego's been scouted for the competitive youth league. Mrs. Rodriguez told me, "He needs to practice, but we can't afford the $75 per month for the community center." Eventually, the Rodriguezes gave in and removed the hoop. I saw Diego sitting despondently on his front step the day it came down, spinning a basketball in his hands with nowhere to shoot it. That evening, I invited the Paddles, Rodriguezes, and several other affected neighbors to our patio for what I carefully termed a small, covenant-compliant gathering of fewer than 10 people. We kept our voices low, wary of Gerald's patrols. "He measured the height of my daughter's swing set 3 times in 1 week," reported Tom Benson, "then fined me because the wood wasn't an earth tone. He sent me a violation for having an unauthorized pet when I was just dog-sitting for my sister," added Lisa Kim. "It was a Yorkie, for heaven's sake, 4 pounds of fluff." As we talked, a pattern emerged. Gerald's enforcement seemed particularly harsh against families with children, anyone who questioned his authority, and especially properties with amenities he seemed to covet, like our pool. "Has anyone actually seen him use the community pool?" I asked. "Given how obsessed he is with rules, you'd think he'd be swimming laps there daily." "It's been closed for repairs for months," Mrs. Jenkins noted, "something about the heater being broken in parts on backorder." "Convenient," Sarah muttered. We agreed to start documenting every interaction with Gerald and researching the HOA bylaws for potential violations of his authority. The Patel's son, Arjun, was a law student who volunteered to look into the legality of some of the covenant amendments. "There are procedures for amending HOA bylaws," he explained, "usually requiring a majority vote of homeowners. If Gerald's been changing rules unilaterally, that's something we can challenge." A small flame of hope kindled within me. Maybe there was a way to fight back through proper channels. That hope was extinguished the very next day when we received our most outrageous fine yet, $250 for hosting an unauthorized community meeting with intent to undermine HOA authority. Somehow, Gerald had learned about our gathering, and he wasn't happy. "This is war," Sarah said, her voice trembling with fury as she held the notice. "He's not just being petty anymore. He's spying on us." I nodded grimly. "We need to be smart about this. If he's watching us, we need to find out what he's really after." Little did I know, the answer would present itself all too soon. The real trouble began in May when both Sarah and I had to travel for work during the same week, a rare occurrence that we meticulously planned for. Our kids, Emma and Jake, stayed with my parents who lived 30 minutes away, and they checked on the house daily. We left detailed instructions about the pool maintenance, trash schedules, and even a reminder to close all window blinds on the street-facing side to avoid potential aesthetic violations. 3 days after we returned home, Diane Petittle rang our doorbell. She stood on our porch holding a plate of freshly baked cookies, but her expression didn't match the friendly gesture. "I thought you should know," she said hesitantly after I invited her in. "Gerald was in your backyard with some woman and kids while you were gone. They were using your pool." "What?" I nearly choked on a chocolate chip cookie. "Someone was in our backyard. They were there for about 2 hours on Tuesday afternoon. I assumed you'd given permission, but something felt off. The woman was giving swimming lessons to the kids." Sarah, who had joined us in the kitchen, exchanged alarmed glances with me. "We absolutely did not give anyone permission to use our pool while we were away," she said. "Are you certain it was Gerald?" "Positive. I saw him unlock your gate with what looked like a master key. He was wearing those ridiculous golf shorts he always wears at HOA meetings." My blood boiled. This wasn't just an invasion of privacy. It was trespassing, breaking, and entering, and who knows what else. "Did you happen to take any pictures?" I asked, hoping for evidence. "No, I'm sorry. I didn't think to. It just seemed so official, with him being the HOA president and all." After Diane left, I immediately checked our security cameras, which Reed installed after receiving so many violation notices. We scrolled through the footage from Tuesday, and there it was, clear as day, Gerald unlocking our gate with what looked like a master key, followed by a blonde woman in her 30s and 3 children carrying pool floats and towels. "That son of a—" Sarah started. "Wait, let's watch it all," I interrupted, as shocked as she was. The footage clearly showed Gerald giving some kind of introduction as the woman set up equipment by the pool. Then, for the next 90 minutes, she conducted what was unmistakably a swimming lesson for the children, while Gerald watched from one of our pool loungers, drinking what appeared to be our beer from our outdoor refrigerator. "This is insane," Sarah whispered. "He's treating our property like it's his own private country club." I was seething. This was trespassing, breaking, and entering, and definitely theft. I printed several still images from the security footage, determined to confront Gerald immediately. I walked the 3 blocks to Gerald's house, my heart pounding with fury. His immaculate Tudor-style home had a sign on the lawn that read, "Member of Sunnyside HOA Board." The perfect lawn was exactly 2 inches tall. I was tempted to measure it myself. Gerald answered the door in a plush bathrobe embroidered with his initials, looking annoyed at the interruption. "What can I do for you?" he asked, not inviting me in. "You can explain why you were in my backyard using my pool without permission while I was out of town," I said, handing him the photos. Gerald glanced at them dismissively. "As HOA president, I have access to all community properties for inspection purposes. It's in Section 17.3 of the Covenant." "My pool is not community property, Gerald." "Actually," he smiled coldly, "Section 22.5 grants the HOA president access to any visible recreational installation to ensure safety compliance. I was conducting a safety check, with children taking swimming lessons and drinking my beer." "I have no idea what you're talking about," he replied. "Those children are my niece's kids. They were helping me measure the pool parameters. The covenant strictly regulates pool dimensions and chemical levels." "Save it, Gerald. I have video of the entire thing. It was clearly a swimming lesson." His expression hardened. "Be careful with accusations, neighbor." falsifying security footage as grounds for a covenant violation under Section 33.2. Decides your pool slide is 6 inches taller than regulations permit, and I've noticed your water feuds has been off by 0.2 points. That's 2 violations right there, $150 each. He closed the door in my face. The next morning, I received a certified letter threatening foreclosure proceedings on our home due to accumulated unpaid fines and repeated covenant violations. The total demanded was over $3,000, most of which were new fabricated violations that had suddenly appeared overnight. When I called our HOA management company to dispute the charges, they informed me that Gerald had already placed a lion on our property. I sat in my car, hands shaking with rage and fear. This was no longer about petty power games or ridiculous rules. Gerald was threatening to take our home. And for what? So he could have access to our pool. That's when I decided, no more Mr. Nice Guy. If Gerald wanted a war, I would give him one. I spent the next week doing extensive research, gathering evidence, and formulating a plan. If Gerald wanted to play dirty, I needed to be smart, methodical, and completely within the law. First, I consulted with a real estate attorney who specialized in HOA disputes. Jennifer Ramirez came highly recommended by a colleague who had fought and won against his own tyrannical HOA. Her office was small but professional, and her wall displayed several framed newspaper articles about HOA cases she had won. "This is one of the most egregious cases I've seen," she said after reviewing our evidence. "He can't just enter your property without permission, regardless of what the covenant says. And swimming lessons. That's a commercial use of private property, which violates zoning laws in your area. Can we sue him personally?" I asked, fantasizing about wiping that smug smile off Gerald's face in court. "We could, but litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Let's try a more strategic approach first." She tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. "As a homeowner, you're legally entitled to review all HOA records, financial statements, meeting minutes, emails, rule amendments, everything. You think there's something there. In my experience, people who abuse power in one area rarely limit themselves to just that. Let's see what else Gerald's been up to." Following her advice, I submitted a formal request for all HOA records for the past 3 years, financial statements, meeting minutes, rule amendments, and email communications. I cited the specific state law that required the HOA to comply. Second, I installed additional security cameras around our property, including hidden ones focusing on the pool area and gate. Over the next 2 weeks, I documented Gerald entering our backyard 6 more times with the same blonde woman and different groups of children. Each time, they conducted swimming lessons lasting about 45 minutes. The woman had even set up a small sign on our pool deck, "Miss Trisha's Water Safety Academy." Some online research revealed Miss Trisha was Patricia Hoffman, Gerald's sister-in-law, who ran a small swimming instruction business. According to her website, she charged $75 per child for 45-minute lessons. Gerald was essentially running a commercial enterprise from my backyard without my knowledge or consent, and pocketing the profits. Third, I gathered my neighbors for a more formal meeting at the local library, outside HOA jurisdiction. Nearly 20 homeowners showed up, all with stories of Gerald's tyranny. I presented my evidence about the swimming lessons and my attorney's assessment of their illegality. "This is outrageous," exclaimed Mrs. Jenkins. "He fines me for roses while running a business from your yard." Tom Benson, who worked in local government, had another insight. Commercial activities in residential areas require specific permits. I doubt Miss Tricia has those. Lisa Kim, who had remained quiet during most of the meeting, suddenly spoke up. "My sister works at the bank where the HOA keeps its accounts. She can't access records, of course, but she's mentioned seeing Gerald making strange transfers. I thought nothing of it until now." A plan began to form. We would divide and conquer. Some neighbors would gather signatures for a petition to remove Gerald from the board, requiring 60% of homeowners. Others would investigate potential zoning violations, and I would continue pushing for financial records. Gerald's response to my records request was immediate and revealing. He called an emergency board meeting and attempted to pass a resolution limiting record access to summaries prepared by the board president. When that failed, thanks to 2 board members who had quietly joined our resistance, he claimed many records were missing or damaged in a recent computer failure. But his panic told us we were on the right track. What was he hiding? After 3 formal demands and a letter from my attorney threatening legal action, we finally received the records. What I found was shocking. The HOA had a contingency fund of over $30,000 that wasn't accounted for in any official capacity. Board meeting minutes show discussions of special projects, with no details provided. Most disturbing of all, there were records of consulting fees paid to a company called Hoffman Strategic Advisors LLC, Gerald's private consulting firm. Gerald had been paying himself $1,000 per month from HOA funds for legal consultation. When I shared these findings with Jennifer, she smiled. "We've got him. This is embezzlement." The pieces were falling into place. Now we needed the final nail in Gerald's coffin. With evidence of Gerald's embezzlement in hand, I could have gone straight to the authorities, but Jennifer advised a more comprehensive approach. "We want to build a case so strong that he can't wiggle out of it," she explained. "And ideally, we want to catch him in the act of using your property for commercial purposes." So I devised a plan that would both gather more evidence and deliver a satisfying dose of justice. First, I installed a pool cover with a key-operated motor, the kind that could be controlled remotely through a smartphone app. I also added a new water filtration system that allowed me to adjust water temperature from my phone. Both were expensive investments, nearly $3,000 total, but worth every penny for what I had planned. Next, I sent a seemingly conciliatory email to Gerald. "After consideration, I understand the community benefit of swim lessons. I've installed some pool upgrades for safety and would be happy to officially offer my pool for lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays as suggested. I'll be traveling extensively this summer and am glad the pool won't go unused." Gerald responded within minutes with a smug email about my civic responsibility and how this cooperation would be noted favorably in my HOA record. He promised to reassess the lien situation if my positive attitude continued. What he didn't know was that I'd also installed underwater cameras and microphones to capture every unauthorized entry and conversation by the pool, evidence that would later prove crucial in court. Meanwhile, 2 important developments occurred that accelerated our plan. First, our petition to remove Gerald from the board reached 58% of signatures, just shy of the 60% needed. Gerald had caught wind of it and was going door to door threatening special assessments against anyone who signed. He had even started randomly towing cars from driveways, claiming they were improperly registered with the HOA. Second, one of the friendly board members, Janet Cooper, secretly forwarded me an email chain where Gerald discussed the swimming lesson arrangement with Miss Tricia. Access to Mitchell's pool is secured for summer lessons. They'll be out of town often, and I've amended the bylaws to allow it. We should charge premium rates since this pool was much nicer than the community one. I'll expect the usual 30% referral fee. This was the smoking gun we needed. I immediately shared it with Jennifer, who prepared documents for the district attorney's office to open an investigation into Gerald for embezzlement and fraud. But the real turning point came at the next HOA meeting. The community room at the local library was packed, not just with our allies, but with curious homeowners who had heard rumors of trouble brewing. Gerald arrived late, clearly annoyed by the large turnout. When he tried to pass yet another amendment giving himself additional inspection powers, board member Janet spoke up. "Before we vote, I think we should address the concerns about the swimming lessons being conducted in private homes," she said carefully. Gerald's face reddened. "That's not on the agenda." "I'm making a motion to add it," said another board member, Mark Richards, who had also joined our resistance. Gerald banged his gavel. "Motion denied. I am the president and—" "Point of order," Janet interrupted. "According to Robert's rules, any board member can motion to amend the agenda, and it requires a simple majority vote." As Gerald sputtered, Mark quickly said, "I second the motion," Gerald looked around the room, suddenly aware that he was losing control. The community room was packed with homeowners, many wearing small blue ribbons, our secret symbol of solidarity against his tyranny. "Fine," he snapped. "A vote." To his visible shock, 3 of the 5 board members voted to discuss the swimming lessons. "This is a simple matter," Gerald tried to recover. "The covenant allows for community education." "Is your sister-in-law paying you for access to the Mitchell's pool?" Janet asked directly. The room fell silent. That's absurd and defamatory," Gerald shouted, his face now scarlet. "Then you won't mind if we review the financial records more carefully," Mark suggested, "including the payments to Hoffman Strategic Advisors." The meeting erupted into chaos. Homeowners began shouting questions about the contingency fund, the consulting fees, and the swimming lessons. Gerald attempted to adjourn the meeting, but the board overruled him. Finally, Gerald stormed out, declaring the meeting illegally hijacked and threatening to take appropriate action against the conspirators. The next day, Janet called to inform me that Gerald had sent a mass email claiming I had vandalized HOA property and was under investigation. He also scheduled an emergency meeting to vote on placing additional lands on our property and removing the disloyal board members. "He's desperate," Jennifer said when I called her. "And desperate people make mistakes." She was right. Our plan was working, but Gerald's desperation made him dangerous. It was time for the final phase. The stage was set for the final act of our plan. I informed Gerald I'd be away for 2 weeks in July for a family emergency. I made a show of loading suitcases into our car while Gerald watched from across the street, pretending to trim his already immaculate hedges. In reality, I took vacation days and stayed at Tom Benson's house nearby. Tom lived just outside our HOA boundaries and was eager to help bring Gerald down. From his guest room, I set up my laptop to monitor our home security system remotely. As expected, the swim lessons expanded immediately. Instead of Tuesdays and Thursdays, they were now running Monday through Friday, with up to 8 children per session and 3 sessions daily. Our pool had become a full-time commercial enterprise. "He's getting bolder," Jennifer observed as we watched the live feed of Miss Tricia conducting her 3rd class of the day. "This is perfect for our case." But we weren't just gathering evidence. We were setting a trap. On day 3 of my absence, I activated the first part of my plan. As Miss Tricia was midway through her 2nd lesson of the day, I remotely activated the pool cover. It began slowly extending across the water, causing confusion among the children and panic from Miss Tricia. "What's happening?" One child cried as the cover crept across the pool surface. "Everyone out of the pool now," Miss Tricia shouted, her voice captured perfectly by our hidden microphones. Gerald, who was lounging in my patio chair enjoying another of my beers, rushed to the pool control panel only to find it locked. The children had to quickly exit the water as the cover completely extended. "Is it broken?" Miss Tricia asked, wrapping a towel around a shivering little girl. "Must be a power surge or something," Gerald muttered, clearly annoyed. "I'll fix it later. Call the parents for pickup." My cameras captured Miss Tricia phoning someone while Gerald tried unsuccessfully to retract the cover. They eventually left, telling the parents who came to collect their children that there were technical difficulties. That evening, using my home's smart lock history, I confirmed Gerald had used his master key to enter through our back gate. Then, accessing the shed where the pool controls were housed, he had cut the manual control wire to the pool cover, effectively disabling the key switch. What he didn't realize was that the wireless backup was still functioning perfectly. The next morning, Gerald arrived early with a toolbox. My cameras recorded him tampering with the pool cover mechanism, eventually getting it retracted. He looked smugly satisfied as he took a photo of his handiwork. "The arrogance," Jennifer said as we watched. "He's actually documenting his criminal trespassing." 1 hour later, Miss Tricia arrived with her first group of 8 children. As they were in the middle of their lesson, I activated my second trap. The pool's heating system went into reverse, gradually cooling the water. The temperature dropped from a comfortable 82 degrees Fahrenheit to 62 degrees Fahrenheit over 30 minutes. Why is it so CC cold? One boy stammered, his lips turning blue. The children started shivering and complaining. Miss Tricia, confused, felt the water and immediately began ushering the kids out. Gerald, once again, checked the control panel only to find nothing wrong visually. When he accessed the shed again, the temperature gauge still showed 82 degrees Fahrenheit. I had installed a fake display cover over the real one. This pool is haunted, one little girl declared as her mother wrapped her in a towel. By the third day, Gerald was clearly frustrated. He brought in a pool technician, at HOA expense, as I later discovered, who could find nothing wrong with the system because I returned all settings to normal remotely after each incident. The lessons continued, albeit with nervous parents and children. Miss Tricia had been forced to reduce her prices due to the unpredictable conditions. For my final act, I waited until their biggest class, a group of 12 children, for an intensive weekend workshop, priced at $150 per child. The weather forecast showed a perfect 85 degrees Fahrenheit sunny day. As the lesson reached its midpoint, I simultaneously activated the pool cover and the cooling system, while also triggering the yard sprinklers to turn on at full blast. The resulting chaos was captured perfectly on my cameras. Children screaming, parents who were watching from my patio getting soaked, Miss Tricia slipping on the wet concrete, and Gerald frantically trying to shut off multiple systems at once. Just as Gerald managed to turn off the sprinklers, a local news van pulled up in front of my house. I had tipped off Channel 9's community watchdog reporter about an illegal swimming business operating in a private residence without the owner's consent. They arrived just in time to capture dozens of wet, shivering children wrapped in towels being led out of my backyard, while Gerald tried unsuccessfully to block the cameras. The trap had been sprung, and Gerald was caught red-handed on live television. The day after the pool chaos made the evening news, I returned early from my trip and expressed shock at the unauthorized use of my property. I called an emergency community meeting at the local library, where I planned to present all of my evidence. Word spread quickly. The meeting room was packed beyond capacity, not just with homeowners, but also with 2 police officers, the district attorney's investigator, and the Channel 9 news crew who had captured the swimming lesson fiasco. Even residents from neighboring subdivisions showed up, eager to witness Gerald's downfall. Gerald arrived last, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled. His wife, Patricia, a quiet woman we rarely saw, sat beside him, looking mortified. Before we begin, I said, standing at the podium, I want to thank everyone for coming. What we're about to discuss affects every homeowner in Sunnyside Estates. I started my presentation innocently enough, photos of pool safety equipment and proper chemical storage. Then, I transitioned to security footage showing Gerald entering my property without permission over 20 separate occasions. As some of you know from the news report, there have been swimming lessons conducted in my pool. I explained calmly. What you may not know is that these were unauthorized commercial activities conducted without proper insurance or my permission. I played audio recordings of Gerald and Miss Tricia discussing pricing strategies and how to fit more children into lessons to maximize profit. I showed financial records indicating approximately $14,000 in lesson fees over the summer, none of which had been reported as business income according to public records. The room fell silent as I moved to my final slides. The HOA financial records showing Gerald's payments to his own company, the unauthorized amendments to bylaws, and the mysterious contingency fund. Additionally, I concluded conducting commercial activities without proper licensing and insurance has exposed every homeowner in this community to potential liability. If a child had been injured during these lessons on my property, my insurance would not have covered it, and the HOA's amendment forcing me to allow these lessons would have implicated all of us in litigation. The silence broke. The room erupted into angry shouts and accusations. Homeowners who had received petty violation notices from Gerald now realized why he'd been so eager to find fault. It funded his own salary through fines. Parents who had paid for lessons were demanding refunds from Miss Tricia, who had slipped out of the meeting early. 3 board members immediately resigned on the spot, claiming they'd been misled about Gerald's activities. Mrs. Jenkins stood up, her voice quavering but determined. Gerald fined me $50 for my roses being too tall while he was stealing from us. I had to take money from my medication budget to pay those fines. Tom Benson revealed that Gerald had been selectively enforcing rules based on personal vendettas and financial gain. The Rodriguezes described how Diego's basketball dreams had been crushed by Gerald's arbitrary hoop ban. Gerald attempted to take control of the meeting, banging a gavel he brought with him. This meeting is out of order. These are baseless accusations and doctored evidence. I've served this community faithfully for. Save it for your lawyer, Gerald, interrupted the district attorney's investigator, standing up. I've seen enough to execute a search warrant for your home and business records. I suggest you come with me voluntarily to answer some questions first. Gerald's face turned an alarming shade of purple. This is a witch hunt. I've done nothing but maintain property values and community standards. He pointed at me. He's the one who sabotaged his own pool with children present. That's endangerment. Actually, I said calmly, I have the right to control my own property, especially when it's being used illegally, and my security system logs will show I only adjusted the temperature and activated safety features, hardly endangerment. The police officers moved toward Gerald, who suddenly seemed to deflate. I want my lawyer, he mumbled. The aftermath was swift and satisfying. Gerald was removed as HOA president by unanimous vote and replaced by Mrs. Jenkins, who immediately declared a common-sense approach to community standards. The forensic audit revealed Gerald had embezzled over $40,000, leading to criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and trespassing. As for our community, it transformed. The Rodriguez's basketball hoop went back up the next day. Mrs. Jenkins' roses continued to grow to their natural height. The Paddles hosted the neighborhood's first official Diwali celebration. I used part of my settlement money to host the neighborhood's first HOA Liberation Pool Party. Everyone was invited, except Gerald, who had moved in with his sister after his wife filed for divorce. That irony wasn't lost on anyone that Gerald, who had once boasted about his legal expertise and ability to manipulate HOA rules, was now facing criminal charges because he couldn't resist using my pool without permission. Sometimes justice, like my pool that fateful weekend, is best served cold.